Oh gee, I didn't even see that guy. What? F you, Gaijin. Good afternoon, you wee bastards, and welcome back to War Thunder with Koala. And in today's video, we're going to be covering a question that every single War Thunder player has asked at some point in their life. You've just unlocked a brand new tank, and it comes fresh from the factory into your hangar, without half of the stuff that vehicle actually promises later down the line. Smoke grenades, more advanced shells, a better power pack, even spare parts and fire suppression equipment. Yes, fire suppression equipment, not fire prevention equipment. Gaijin, get on that. You don't prevent a fire that's already going inside your vehicle, that's not... Fire extinguisher, at least. Seriously, Gaijin, that's even the icon you use. Wow, apparently that's a trigger for me. But of course, the question you want to ask is, how do I play my stock tank? How can I ease my way through the stock grind and at least start upgrading those modules, without just suffering as I throw my vehicle ineffectually at an enemy team who you have to assume are better kitted up than you? There's a wee rule. Rule number 1, always assume the enemy is spaded, which if you don't know means fully upgraded. The vehicle's tab gets a little spades icon superimposed over it once you have every upgrade. And you don't know which upgrades the enemy has, so it's just safer to assume they are fully upgraded all the time. Stock grinding in War Thunder can be quite the challenge, because not only are you playing a brand new vehicle for the first time, perhaps at a higher rank than you've ever played before, and are learning both the playstyle of the new vehicle and the meta of the tier you're playing at, but your vehicle itself is subpar compared to everyone else's. Even fellow players in the same tank not only will be more experienced in that vehicle, but their vehicle itself is more upgraded and more powerful than yours is. But there are some things to keep in mind, and things you can do to make your stock tank experience a lot easier, and contrary to what Gaijin themselves have said in the past, it ain't spawn camping. Don't do that. Now, the majority of these tips apply just as much to fully upgraded vehicles. They are just good habits to get into when you're playing, but they're vastly more important when you're trying specifically to research through the upgrade tree of a brand new tank. So obviously for this first match we're here in the American M551 Sheridan light tank on the Poland map. It's a triple capture point game, and after flipping the gun around to boost us towards the cap, we've gotten ourselves on the board by capturing Bravo. What we're doing next is we're heading to a specific spot on the map which I never see people take, and that's exactly why we're going there. Of course, holding a second to analyse the situation both around our location as well as on the minimap, seeing where our team is being engaged before poking out. We've got a teammate in the AMX-10 RC behind us, the French wheeled tank destroyer, and with him patrolling and pushing up to the south and our team all engaging the enemy around Alpha, I know it's going to be safe to push out, and our goal is this building right here, to the left of the fountain and the church in the middle of the town. Now, BMP-1's about to take out the AMX-10 unfortunately, but first, I spot the Obel coming out the street ahead and... RNGesus giveth, and RNGesus can taketh away. Luckily, the Obel doesn't spot us in time either, and we're able to use the 50 cal on top of the Sheridan to penetrate what the 152mm heat round apparently could not. Now that's the good thing about this specific location, and I know I'm ruining it by making this video, but people never tend to look over here. They're focused on the main street over there, and this little plus-shaped area in the buildings just in front of me. They always seem to forget about this wee garden area that connects the two, however, which allows you to get some fantastic sightlines without being in too much danger, and that's exactly what you're looking for, is these areas which enemy players tend to overlook. That of course requires knowledge about the map, and you'll find it much easier to work out in close quarters city maps, this one being a perfect example and one of the best maps in the game for low to mid tier gameplay. Now, I'm concerned about that BMP-1, whom I expected to come through these buildings, so after a bit of difficulty, of course dealing with the stock engine and transmission in this tank, we pushed down that stone wall there, and I decided that I'd head towards the BMP instead of waiting for him to come to me, because with my team comprehensively taking the northern section of the map, at least for now, there's not much for me to do from that location anymore. But we will return there later on this match, and I can talk about why it's so important. So at this point I didn't realise that the BMP has already been killed, and I thought I was going to run into him in or around these buildings. This is usually, like I said, a hotspot for players moving in towards Bravo or pushing ahead after capping it. And even though it might seem like a decent ambush position, I don't want to stay here any longer than I need to. Spot the target in the defo lead in Bravo by his antenna. It's a Leopard 1. Difficult to make out as I had grass and tank sight turned on. I didn't realise he saw me, but luckily he only took out my commander and we were able to put a shot into his turret for our second kill. There is another Leopard down there however, so we're going to scout him and then retreat back into cover, and given that he's still firing his MGs, it seems as though he can't actually see us or knows where I am, so I take the opportunity to reposition and come at the bastard from a different angle, heading around to the far side of the buildings. It will be a bit of a risk going into enemy territory with no teammates around, especially with a tank with only chemical energy munitions, meaning I can't fire through any of these fences here if a tank were to pop out to my right. However, even speeded, the Sheridan doesn't get kinetic energy projectiles. But as long as I'm careful moving out, it's safer than engaging the Leopard head on, who meanwhile has deployed smoke, which allows me to get right up close behind him and use his own smoke as cover from behind, without him seeing me coming. Of course I can't see him either until... there he is, expecting me to still be in that same location, and I get to put a nice easy shot into him, kill number 3. Now I'm playing it safe here. I'm heading right back into my team's side of the capture point where I am completely covered from basically all angles. My teammates have secured Charlie. They don't have Alpha, but they're all over the middle of the map, which means nobody is likely to be coming from that direction, and I can get a second base capture as well. And this is the thing in a light tank, you're still pretty mobile even stock, and you can easily rack up a lot of points by going around capturing bases, which is also helpful to your team winning the games. Just as long as you're not going onto maps like Eastern Europe or Port Novorossiysk, where the teams both have one cap closer to them and then one in the middle, and going for the closest cap early game. That's a huge waste of your speed, and you sacrifice map coverage and the central capture zone, along with denying the slower tanks on your team spawn points, which means there are going to be less teammates to support you in the map later on in the game, which all put together is basically hamstringing your team's chances of winning. Actually, that's a video I want to make reasonably soon about that topic, specifically on the Mozdok map, because it's a real problem there. So it's important to note that after capturing the zone, I didn't immediately move back up in the map to where I was before. Instead, I've come back around inside friendly territory and almost reset our position to the kind of position you'd take very early on in the match. We went forward of that location earlier, and now we've actually come back, and now we're once again by this building. What I'm working with here is what I like to call engagement lanes, and basically I'm looking for where tanks on this map usually shoot. If you draw a line between where one tank shoots from and where their shot lands, that's an engagement lane, and with some map knowledge, it's very easy to work out where the most common engagement lanes are. Now looking at the map and the team situation right now, I suspected there'd be a tank to my left, and that's when I hear the Panther 2. Immediately machine gun out the fence so that I can put a shot into him, which unfortunately whiffs into his track, and I immediately scurry off, scouting him in the process. Perhaps the M50 can take him out, and then moving around once again to come at him from a different angle. Look right, because there are two common engagement lanes just over there, and one of them is right where that German M38 is. Or was. Our friend in the M50 got taken out by the Panther 2, but fortunately he's still scouted, so another friendly is going to take him out. And now we're heading down towards Bravo, which the enemy team has just decapped. Now, usually in spaded vehicles, particularly heavy tanks and some of the slower tank destroyers, players are looking for engagement lanes where they can get the most work done, because they know that somewhere along those lanes, enemy tanks are going to appear. The problem with that strategy in a stock tank, or really any light tank in general, is that the spots that would appear to be the most lucrative locations are often where multiple lanes intersect, making them very difficult to hold as you're likely to get caught in a crossfire. What I'm doing with my stock tank is very intentionally putting myself right in the dark spots where there are no engagement lanes, at least not commonly. And it was when I rewatched this footage and saw that I was almost instinctively doing this that I decided I wanted to make this video. Ironically enough, as I get to that part in my commentary, I was actually driving out in the open right through at least 2 engagement lanes, one being from the enemy sniper hill just southeast of their top spawn, that's probably the most common one on this map, and the other being from their lower spawn into Bravo, which was a wee bit dangerous, and if it were earlier in the match I wouldn't have even come down into this cap. Instead, I would have gone back through the town, once again through a dark zone where there aren't any engagements commonly happening, and trying to hunt down the R3 as he left this cap, but I was reasonably confident that at this stage in the match there wouldn't be any enemy tanks watching those lanes, as I suspect most of the remaining enemy players are going to be preoccupied to the north, so that lets us get another cap under our belt. Our team has a huge advantage at this point, and we are actually top of the team, but our work isn't done yet. So, engagement lanes do change throughout the battle, depending on which team takes the lead in which area, so it is quite a complicated process to try and work out which ones are likely to be active and which aren't. And regardless, there's always those random outliers who like to sit in a location where it really makes no sense for them to be, and so you don't even think to check for them. Think of it like a chess game, only some pieces occasionally just decide to move in completely different ways to what you're used to. With that being said, this tank destroyer here, which I guess would be the rook in this analogy, is checking the enemy spawn and all the engagement lanes around him there, but over past Alpha, there's a knight moving into play in the form of a Leopard 1. The Stridsvarn 103 here is pretty clearly Fubar, and there's not a whole lot I could have done to him anyway, stock or spaded from the front. But with him taken care of, we can help our friendly AMX-30 repair, which is of course something light tanks can't do when completely stock, but I actually did have parts unlocked before I played this battle, and also in the next battle too. It's a bit of a bad idea for me to sit here however, because with nobody on our team over in this area, where we are sitting is an active engagement lane, and there's an enemy Leopard 1 behind that bush. I scout him, which you can scout tanks stock in a light tank, but I can't fire at him through the bush with a heat round. For whatever reason the AMX-30 didn't either, and he takes us out. Not to worry though, because we have plenty of backups in this lineup, and I elected to finish this game in the F-84G Thunderjet, which I'm also going through spading. And that's another thing I want to stress, is when you're playing a stock tank, have a lineup. You want to maximise the rewards you're getting for each match so that you have to play that stock tank as little as possible before getting it at least on the road to fully upgraded. And so winning your matches should definitely be a large priority, even if you're playing a vehicle that isn't the stock tank you're trying to upgrade. You'll find it much more lucrative to play another vehicle in order to make sure you win your games than just to hop into a second game as quickly as possible and end up losing the first one, and losing about 30% of the reward you would have earned for a win with the same result. Take out the G55, the enemy jet, which I heard manages to crash without killing anybody, which is good for our team, and I do drop bombs on the Jagdtiger moving out of spawn. He definitely wasn't a priority target, and if the situation were different I would have actually left him to try and bomb a more important enemy, but the game was so close to being over by this point that I wouldn't have gotten a second go around anyway. So that match got me more than halfway to spading my Sheridan, but that's a light tank, a nimble, mobile vehicle that can abuse the dark zones between engagement lanes and very quickly manoeuvre between them. What about a heavier vehicle? So in our second match today, we switched over to the phenomenal Yanked Panther, which is a vehicle I, for some reason, never got around to going through the spading process with. Once again, I believe I have parts during this match, but nothing else, and as you can see, our tank is not nearly as quick as it would normally be. However, for the armour it brings to the table and the quite powerful gun for a battle rating of 6.3, this is still quite a nimble tank destroyer. I did debate spawning at the northern point, which is where a vehicle like this would normally go to camp behind a ridge, rather than trying to push across this large stretch of open ground, particularly at higher tiers. That's actually one of the most imbalanced parts of this map. This is the European province map, the larger version of Eastern Europe. But down at 6.3, we should be safe to run this gauntlet, even in a stock tank. And for that same reason, we don't want to be sitting up north of the river trying to snipe, because as a stock tank, our gun isn't nearly as accurate as it will be with the adjustment of fire upgrade. It's kind of a lose-lose situation on this map, over on this side. Similarly to Middle East, where the left side's top spawn is essentially worthless, the enemy team can fire right into it within seconds of beginning the match. And here, well, you can see the lack of cover, as well as the lack of a good vantage point, whereas the opposing team has a large hill they can either snipe from, with plenty of soft cover, or they can stay behind that hill and either head to the south to Comet C, obscured by the forest, or head into the town where Bravo is located, without ever presenting a target. Essentially, our entire spawn area, this plateau, even right at the beginning of the game, is open to one engagement lane, and as the match progresses, 3 more open up against it, making it very difficult for this side to win if they don't establish a presence over here early on. Although, once again, this is more the case at higher tiers, where armour is next to meaningless and guns are incredibly accurate even out to 2 kilometers. Engagement lanes, however, are much more difficult to keep track of on open maps, and being in a casemate tank destroyer, we need to treat them a wee bit differently. Once again, we are not going to sit in them just waiting for an opponent to pop out somewhere over the other end like a jousting match, but we're also not going to be going for those dark zones that sit in the middle of a web of engagement lanes, like an eye of a storm, because the likelihood is too high that someone will pop out from a location we're not prepared for. Unfortunately, wasn't in time to catch the Pershing, so we know he's going to be in Bravo very soon, but we are in a perfect position now to delete the IS-1 as he tries to follow. Now, we are quite far into enemy territory here, and as a casemate, something else we're not good at is retreating, particularly when our reverse gear in this tank is, well, say no more. So what we want to do now is get ourselves into Bravo, take care of the threat that might come from our side. Capturing the zone doesn't hurt either, and using the buildings of this town we will be able to move freely back and forth, so long as our team can hold Alpha. The fact that our team does hold that area also means that this location would be quite compromised for the enemy tank who captured it, which makes me confident that he won't still be around. We also get a map ping from our friendly Tiger 1, who seems to think that there's a tank over in amongst the buildings to our left. So we're going to leave the zone, we can capture it later on, and as I come down the hill, I can definitely hear the engine of that M26 Pershing, and he's right behind this building. There he is. Yep, actually I think that's a T25. Yep, Tiger 1 takes him out, well deserved kill. I think we actually distracted him. He must have heard my engine coming down and then wasn't prepared for the Tiger in front of him. Always good to reward a random teammate who actually knows what teamwork is. Fantastic to see. Pinging the map, understanding what I was doing, and making the best use of that. He's going to go in cap. Ordinarily I would have gone to cap with him, especially being in a stock tank. Caps are worth a decent chunk of RP. And there was even an enemy light tank over there I could possibly have killed if I'd been quick enough. Instead, we're going to go and be of some use elsewhere. Once again, we're thinking of engagement lanes, and what we're going to do in this tank is kind of attach ourselves along the side of one of these metaphorical lanes, far enough away from it that enemies wouldn't think to look in our direction, but close enough that we can still take advantage of it. So we're pushing further forward here, which might seem a wee bit strange in a tank that's kind of designed to fight at longer ranges. And that's one thing I want to mention, is that in both the tanks we've played today, the Sheridan and the Yanked Panther, the stock and speeded forms of these tanks actually performed completely differently, with the Sheridan having access to an anti-tank guided missile later down the line, from which it can very easily snipe long range, while stock with only the low velocity heat round, you need to be getting in quite close. And the Yanked Panther as well, with the 88mm having relatively poor accuracy at long ranges, until you unlock that adjustment of fire, which after parts and FPE would be the first thing I suggest researching, allowing you to be quite the effective ridgeline sniper on a map like this. For now though, we're going to keep pushing in, and that's when I spot this T-34 trying to retreat into the trees. Now if I hadn't noticed him in time, he could have used that tree cover to hit me in the side, but luckily that gambit failed, and after taking him out almost immediately, A new contestant enters the battle, and this is the thing about these engagement lanes, is that they're almost always travel lanes as well. Players, as I said, always seem to want to put themselves right in these areas where they think they're going to be presented with a target-rich environment, forgetting that they themselves are subject to the same treatment by the enemy players thinking exactly the same thing. That means that from a relatively obscure position, where we're not likely to be targeted, I can be ready for enemies to present easy shots to me. And even though I wasn't ready for that M41, I was able to outmaneuver the light tank, and although we did fire at exactly the same time, this tank destroyer is fantastically well armoured frontally, and has that glorious long 88, which we also dunk a shot into that second T-34 for our 4th kill. We're still quite far into a compromised area of the map right here though that my team definitely does not have held down. But the thing is that they do have control over all the areas of the map where an enemy could feasibly get a shot into my vulnerable sides and rear, besides perhaps over to my right where the enemy control all of the land around Charlie. The thing is though, the fact that they do have that level of control over this side means that they likely won't be looking for me here. They'll be wanting to move down into the town and solidifying their claim to this side of the map, searching for my allies in the town, and I can focus my attention entirely on the tanks moving through this area. Like that M19 there. AA count, right? Either way, that's kill number 5. I don't want to move on Charlie myself, however. There's far too much open ground to cover, and the Yanked Panther only really has any respectable protection frontally. Even that M19 could easily kill me from 500 or 600 meters away side on. So we're going to either have to wait for our teammates to come back in from the southern spawn, unlikely as, like I said, this map is very imbalanced against that spawn location, or we're going to have to win this game with only 2 caps, which is definitely the more likely option. Right now, that means moving up even further, for 2 reasons. Now, you may not have noticed, but around the time I killed that M19, we actually had a tank destroyer who had been moving on Charlie that got taken out by an M18 Hellcat. He likely would also have seen the M19 die and know that there must be somebody over in this general direction, especially if he'd been paying attention and seen the M41 and the T-34 die as well, and that's quite the swift tank, so we want to have changed locations by the time he makes it over here to look for us. We also don't want to make ourselves vulnerable to any new spawners coming this way, who will no doubt be wanting to head down the hill in front of me to get into Bravo and secure the advantage. And just to put the icing on the cake, as I'm moving up, I spot the muzzle flash of enemy anti-aircraft fire. Now that means a soft, juicy target, and this is also going to be quite a good location for us to be, because we'll be able to defend our teammates down in the town from anybody spawning over this direction, once again from a location the enemy team wouldn't normally think to look, because there are no engagement lanes over here, at least not any common enough to plan a strategy around. Here the M19 firing over to my left, slightly down the hill, and over this kind of terrain it's going to take my tank a while to stabilise, so I take the risk, put a shot into him on the move, and unfortunately it's not quite enough and he's still able to move away. What happens here is quite entertaining. I actually lost the M19. I've sped up this footage so you can see the chase we went through. But over here I'm in such little danger and I kind of thought we had this game by this point. So I decided I'd give chase and hunt down the enemy SPAA who's managed to hide in the tree cover. Fortunately, I am heading in the right direction because the enemy team has begun to capture Bravo and my teammates are all holding back in the town. So I'm heading down, intending to be the hammer to their anvil, and that's when I catch up with the M19 again, racing me through the town towards both our friendly forces. Yeah, not getting away from me that easily, are you little chicken bastard? Unfortunately, seconds later we do get taken out by an M18 who popped out. I have no idea what he was doing there as we hadn't been spotted for a very long time, but he plops a shot into my side armour and one shot kills me. But it's not to worry, as once again we have a powerful lineup to call on, and I did first respawn on a Rado before jumping into one of my favourite tanks, the West German M41 Worker Bulldog. Now you can see Alpha being capped behind me, which I did help out with in the M41, plus Bravo, which we did help secure. I did actually do quite a lot of work before what you're seeing in the M41, but unfortunately the footage was corrupted, or it was really jerky, which happens sometimes with my shadow play. I don't know. There, you see it right there. So unfortunately you guys aren't getting to see that. But besides showing the importance of a backup vehicle, it's not really what this video is about anyway. Now, like I said, it is extremely important to have a lineup, even though you might be thinking that wouldn't you get through the stock round more quickly by just hopping straight into another battle in the stock tank rather than playing other vehicles? But we would definitely have lost this match if I hadn't respawned both the Arado and the M41. Got 2 kills in the Arado. I don't believe we got any in the M41, but we did get something like 6 assists, plus I scouted 2 players who captured Alpha, which allowed my team to move up on them without having to search for where they were hiding. And because of that, we were able to win the match, which meant that my actions in the Yanked Panther were rewarded much more heavily. It's either 30% or possibly in tank battles 50% more when you win the game. So to recap, make sure you're keeping an eye on your teammates and where you position yourself so that they're covering your most vulnerable points. That'll prevent you getting set on fire or having modules damaged before you have parts in FPE. And if you're close enough to your team, or in a squad for example, then provided you survive the first shot, you should be able to keep on ticking. Make sure you bring a lineup, and even if you're playing one of the minor nations like Japan, Italy or Sweden, there are always options for you to build a lineup, even if some of the vehicles you're bringing out are of a lower BR. It's still worth it trying to win and getting that reward modifier, meaning that your tank is stock for fewer matches. Make sure you understand what your tank is capable of stock and how it plays compared to how it changes as you grab different upgrades, and effectively treat them as 2 different tanks. And of course, know the maps you're playing on so that you can keep an eye on those engagement lanes. That's definitely the main point I want you to take away from this video. Keep an eye on where engagements most commonly take place, the lines of sight, the lines where shots typically travel along, and try to find the positions you can sit in where you're making the best use of those lanes, either staying close by a particularly lucrative one or moving from dark spot to dark spot. Once again, these tips are just as relevant to speeded vehicles, and I'm sure many of you more experienced players out there are already playing with these things in mind, even if it is subconsciously or instinctively. But in stock vehicles, hopefully these tips will help you push your way through those stock hurdles without pulling your hair out, because you know how to play a stock tank. Anyway lads, that is going to be all for this video. I hope you have enjoyed. Please leave a like if you did, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know your thoughts on this video down in the comments section below. Did it help you? Have you noticed these engagement lanes? And would you want to see one of these videos for aircraft in future as well? There's definitely less to talk about there, but I could probably sort one out if enough people want to see it. Comment below. Come follow me on Twitter and Twitch, join the Discord, and check out Patreon or hit the join button here on YouTube if you wish to support the channel further. By the way, a big thank you to all the new backers, it really means a lot. Thank you lads all so much for watching, have a lovely good day, and always remember, keep a whiskey to hand, keep your kilt on, and I'll catch you next time. I say a wee thank you to these lads for supporting me on Patreon. Bluefeet OC, Mo, Bias Remover, Rosekill, Metallic Green, Church 152, Crescent, Captain Fibar, The Britlander, Seagull Nuts, BA261, Latvian Wolf, Gisliga Darson, and Dark Recon. You lads are bro. Want to join them? Come check out Patreon at the link in the description below.